Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed listeners, today I invite you to consider a thought-provoking concept: she bloomed in his love. To some, this may evoke the idea of dependence, of one person needing another to feel complete. But let us instead examine this concept through the lens of Stoic philosophy, a philosophy that values wisdom, resilience, and the cultivation of inner strength. Love, when approached through the lens of Stoic philosophy, is not meant to be a dependency, a possession, or a source of identity. Rather, it is a context within which one's character may be refined and elevated. The Stoics were not against love. They merely warned against making it the axis on which one's sense of self revolves. To depend on love for happiness, for self-worth, or for direction is to give away the very sovereignty of the soul. The one who blooms in love does so not because she clings to the other, but because she stands beside them, rooted in her own inner strength, yet nourished by the presence of another who respects her autonomy. Seneca, one of the great Roman Stoics, once said, "He is most powerful who has power over himself." In love, this power is not relinquished, it is shared. She did not bloom because he gave her the sun. She bloomed because she had already learned to turn toward the light. His love did not become her purpose. It became the garden where her own virtue could grow. It was not his affection that defined her, but the way she responded to it with grace, discipline, and awareness. Love, in this way, becomes a catalyst, a setting that encourages the unfolding of what was already within. When love is treated as dependency, it leads to fragility. The beloved becomes an idol, and the self withers in their shadow. This is antithetical to Stoic teaching. To the Stoic, the ideal relationship is one in which each partner remains whole unto themselves. Each must seek their fulfillment through the cultivation of wisdom, courage, temperance, and justice, the four cardinal virtues. Love, then, is not the wellspring of these virtues, but the mirror in which they are reflected, challenged, and strengthened. Epictetus warned, "When you kiss your child or your wife, say to yourself that you are kissing a mortal." This was not a rejection of love, but a reminder of its impermanence and its place within the larger framework of reason. If we base our peace on someone else's presence, we become slaves to fortune. But if we learn to value others rightly as companions on the journey of self-mastery, then their presence becomes a gift, not a requirement. She bloomed not because she was loved, but because she understood how to love without losing herself. And he, by loving her rightly, not as a possession, but as an equal, created the space where this could happen. The blooming of a soul is an inward process. No matter how much affection is given from the outside, it cannot substitute for self-awareness and internal discipline. His love may have been gentle, encouraging, wise, but it was her response to that love, shaped by her reason and grounded in her own virtue, that caused her to flourish. In this way, love becomes not the cause of blooming, but the condition under which inner potential is revealed. The Stoic does not say, "I need you to be whole." The Stoic says, "I choose you because in your presence I remain whole and I grow better." The distinction is subtle but profound. Dependency shackles the soul. Love as a catalyst liberates it. Thus, love must be held with the open hand of respect, not the clenched fist of attachment. The one who blooms in love has not surrendered her strength. She has discovered it anew, in a setting that neither demands her conformity nor inflates her pride. His love was not the cause of her blooming. It was the place where she learned how to bloom with dignity. No individual can truly flourish in love until they have first cultivated mastery over themselves. Before one can offer themselves to another in honesty and strength, they must have come to know and govern their own nature. To seek romantic fulfillment without first attaining self-mastery is to build on shifting sands. It is to ask another to complete what we have not yet understood or nurtured in ourselves. The Stoics teach that a fulfilled life, including a fulfilled love, begins not with the other, but with the self. True self-mastery, as the Stoics understood it, is not about suppression of emotion, but about the alignment of the soul with reason. It is about knowing what is within one's control and acting in accordance with virtue. In matters of love, this is especially essential. If we enter into a relationship from a place of emotional volatility, insecurity, or a lack of purpose, then love becomes an escape rather than a communion. But when one has cultivated clarity of mind and steadiness of character, love becomes a meeting of two whole individuals, not a rescue, not a refuge, but a partnership. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." This is no less true in love. She who has not yet come to govern her thoughts, who has not questioned her assumptions, her fears, her desires, will bring those storms into any relationship she enters. She may mistake attention for love, control for care, and passion for permanence. But when she has achieved a degree of self-mastery, she sees clearly, love is not about being saved, but about walking together in virtue and mutual respect. To master oneself is to become free. The Stoics taught that freedom is not found in doing whatever one wishes, but in being unaffected by what lies beyond one's power. How often do relationships falter because one or both partners seek control over the other's choices, thoughts, or behaviors? The wise person knows that love cannot be coerced or shaped to one's will. Instead, it must be freely given and freely received, grounded in the recognition that the only person we can truly govern is ourselves. This mastery is also the source of emotional resilience. A woman who has cultivated strength within herself does not collapse when love is delayed or denied. She does not mistake the absence of romantic partnership for the absence of worth. She is rooted like a well-tended tree, and so love, when it comes, does not uproot her. It simply allows her to grow further. She does not love in order to become someone. She loves as someone who already is. When she met him, it was not as someone incomplete, waiting to be defined by another's gaze. It was as someone already whole, who saw in him not a solution, but a companion. And because she had come to know herself, her values, her boundaries, her aspirations, she could love him not out of need, but from a place of strength. Their love did not fill a void. It expanded a capacity already present. Thus, romantic fulfillment is not the first step in the journey. It is a reward for having walked the path of self-awareness and virtue. It is not a source of identity, but an expression of two identities grounded in wisdom. He did not give her purpose, she already had it. He did not show her who she was, he simply stood beside her as she lived it out. To master the self is to be prepared for love that is not desperate, not consuming, but harmonious. And only in such harmony can one truly bloom. All things external to us, possessions, praise, status, relationships, even love, are, by nature, impermanent. To base one's peace or sense of identity on what is outside one's control is to build a life vulnerable to the whims of fortune. The Stoics taught us that the only true good lies in our own character and choices, for these alone are within our power. Everything else is fleeting, subject to change, decay, or loss. To understand this is not to reject love, but to love with clarity, humility, and freedom. She bloomed not because she believed his love would last forever, but because she no longer needed it to. Her peace did not depend on constancy of affection, but on her inner orientation toward wisdom and virtue. She learned, through reason, that even the most beautiful connection is not immune to time, circumstance, or mortality, and rather than despair at this truth, she accepted it, and from that acceptance drew her strength. To a Stoic, the shifting nature of external events is not tragic, but expected. As Epictetus said, "You are but an actor in a play. The playwright decides the length." When one understands this, one does not fear the end of a scene, nor mistake the stage for eternity. In love, this perspective fosters presence. When she was with him, she did not waste energy trying to bind the future to her will. Instead, she cherished each moment as it was, sincere, meaningful, but not promised. It is a paradox of the human heart that we often try to cling tightly to what we most cherish. But clinging is rooted in fear, and fear is the child of illusion. She learned that to love wisely is to love freely. The more she tried to control his presence, the more she would lose herself. But the more she focused on what was hers to govern, her thoughts, her actions, her virtue, the more fully she could participate in love without being undone by its potential loss. This is not coldness, it is clarity. The Stoic does not love less deeply because they recognize impermanence. On the contrary, they love more purely because they do not mix their love with desperation. He may have left, he may have stayed, he may have changed, but none of these things could shake the foundation she had built within herself, and so she bloomed, not because she believed the garden would always remain, but because she had learned how to grow even when the weather changed. She could appreciate his presence without needing it. She could enjoy their bond without demanding permanence. This freedom allowed her to express love without fear, gratitude without grasping, connection without control. In this way, love became not an escape from life's uncertainty, but a deeper engagement with it. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, everything is ephemeral, fame and the famous as well. If even the greatest empires and names pass into dust, how much more fleeting are the everyday joys we so often take for granted. And yet, this is precisely why we must cherish them, not as possessions, but as gifts. She did not take his love for granted. She did not assume it would remain unchanged. She treasured it while it was present and let it shape her while it lasted. And when the season passed, if it did, she did not break. For her roots were not in him, they were in herself. To live well is to make peace with impermanence. To love well is to do the same. When she bloomed in his love, it was not because the sun never set. It was because she had learned how to face both light and shadow with grace. In the Stoic tradition, virtue is the highest good. All else, pleasure, emotion, beauty, even love, is secondary to the cultivation of moral character. For a relationship to be meaningful in the eyes of reason, it must be grounded not in the fleeting waves of shared emotion, but in a common pursuit of virtue. Love that is built solely on passion may burn brightly, but it burns fast and leaves little behind. Love that is built on virtue, however, becomes a steady flame, a guiding light that endures hardship, change, and time. She bloomed in his love not because they always felt the same way, but because they were aligned in what they valued: integrity, truth, patience, and justice. Emotions will rise and fall, affection may waver in intensity, there may be days of distance, disagreement, or doubt, but when two people share virtue, they return to each other not out of habit or dependency, but out of deliberate, rational choice. They remain because they recognize in the other a fellow traveler on the path of wisdom. The Stoics caution us against being swept away by emotion. Emotion, though natural, is not always trustworthy. It is easily influenced, by circumstances, by fear, by desire, by misunderstanding. If we anchor love in emotion alone, we risk allowing our judgment to be clouded. We begin to see the other not as they are, but as we wish them to be or fear them to be. In contrast, when love is rooted in shared virtue, we relate to one another with clarity and respect. We are not trying to possess or change the other. We are striving, side by side, toward the same moral ideals. Seneca wrote, "A friend is someone who inspires the best in you." This applies even more deeply to a lover. A true romantic partner is not merely a source of comfort or pleasure. They are a mirror that reflects your character and a challenge that calls you to rise higher. He did not simply make her feel adored. He called forth her better nature. He reminded her of the strength she had and held her accountable to her own principles. In return, she did the same for him. Their love became not an escape from life, but a commitment to live it well together. This is why shared virtue surpasses shared emotion. It offers a foundation that emotions alone cannot provide. When disagreements arise, as they inevitably do, it is virtue, patience, humility, and justice that leads the way back to understanding. When hardship comes, it is courage and wisdom that sustain the bond. She bloomed in his love not because they avoided difficulty, but because their shared values gave them the tools to navigate it. There is a misconception in modern love that agreement in feeling is the highest form of connection. But feelings are changeable, and sometimes they even contradict our better judgment. The Stoic does not suppress emotion, but neither do they obey it blindly. In love, as in all things, reason must guide the heart. She did not love him only when it felt easy. She loved him by choice, because in his company she grew wiser, more just, more herself. And he loved her not because she pleased him constantly, but because she challenged him to become the man he most deeply wished to be. In this way, love becomes an ethical alliance. Two people who, even amid mistakes and moments of weakness, remain dedicated not just to each other, but to the good. That is what sustained her blooming. Not just the warmth of emotion, but the strength of shared principles. Love, when guided by the principles of Stoic philosophy, is not blind, chaotic, or purely emotional. It is thoughtful, measured, and deeply compassionate. It is not less powerful because it is governed by reason. In fact, it is stronger and more enduring precisely because it is anchored in rational care and ethical responsibility. In Stoicism, love is not opposed to reason. It is an expression of it when rightly practiced. True love is an act of moral will, not just emotional reaction. She bloomed in his love not because he idolized her or drowned her in affection, but because his love was a form of understanding. He saw her not as a fantasy or possession, but as a human being, imperfect, evolving, and worthy of dignity. This kind of love does not inflate the ego, it respects the soul. It does not demand perfection, but honors the effort toward virtue. In his love, there was patience, not pressure, clarity, not confusion. It was compassion guided by wisdom, a balance of feeling and thought. The Stoics taught that we should never be governed by impulse. Even in love, they argued, our emotions must be examined, shaped by reason, and made to serve a higher purpose. This does not mean love must be cold or mechanical. It means it must be conscious. A Stoic does not love because they are overwhelmed by feeling. They love because they have chosen to value another person's well-being as part of their own moral commitment to the world. This is not less noble than romantic idealism. It is more. Compassion is the natural outflow of recognizing our shared humanity. As Marcus Aurelius said, "What injures the hive injures the bee." She bloomed in his love because he did not treat her as separate from himself, nor as a means to his own gratification. He acted toward her as one who understands that love is a moral responsibility. He was gentle not out of weakness, but out of strength. He offered support not because he needed her to be dependent, but because he wished to see her rise. Likewise, she loved him with compassion and reason. She did not smother or idolize him, but supported his growth, challenged his assumptions, and reminded him of his highest self. Her care for him was not possessive, it was grounded in justice and clarity. She did not seek to change him, but to stand beside him as he changed himself. This is the kind of love that allows both partners to breathe, to evolve, and to live with integrity. Stoic love is not indifferent, but it is free from obsession. It is not devoid of emotion, but it is free from emotional tyranny. It allows one to act lovingly even when feelings fluctuate. It teaches that to love wisely is to love in accordance with nature, that is, to love others with respect for their freedom and individuality, and to love without seeking to control outcomes beyond our power. In his love, she experienced not just affection, but moral clarity. She was not blinded by passion, she was illuminated by presence. He did not give her reason to lose herself, he gave her space to become herself more fully. And because she had cultivated the same inner strength, she loved him in kind, with compassion, reason, and moral steadiness. To the Stoic, love is not merely a feeling to be enjoyed. It is a field in which virtue is practiced. It is a crucible in which one's patience, courage, and sense of justice are tested and refined. She bloomed in his love not because it was perfect, but because it was principled, and in the light of that principled love, she became more than she had ever been. In the Stoic understanding of relationships, no human being belongs to another. Love is not a matter of control or ownership. It is a voluntary partnership between two rational beings who seek to live in accordance with nature and virtue. The transformation that occurs through love, when it is real, wise, and free, is not the result of one person shaping the other like clay, but of each person inspiring the other to refine their own form. It is a process of growth born from connection, never from possession. She bloomed in his love not because he held her tightly, but because he never tried to hold her at all. He did not demand that she change to suit his preferences. He did not impose expectations or mold her into an image of what he desired. Instead, he chose to witness her fully, attentively, and to walk beside her as she unfolded into herself. His presence created the space for her to become, not because he forced it, but because he allowed it with reverence and patience. To the Stoic, freedom is essential to all forms of virtue. Without autonomy, there can be no moral choice, and without choice, there can be no real love. Possession, then, is the antithesis of Stoic love. When one seeks to possess another, they deny the other's moral agency. They reduce the beloved from a person to a role, from a soul to a function. But when one seeks connection without possession, they recognize the other as an equal, a whole being capable of growth, thought, and virtue. This recognition transforms both people. She became more herself not because he dictated who she should be, but because his love was a mirror of mutual respect. He did not try to fix her. He simply believed in the parts of her that were already good and trusted in her ability to refine the rest. In doing so, he reminded her that she was not broken, not lacking, not waiting to be saved, but rather in motion, evolving. The Stoics taught that we are not to cling to what is not ours, and no person is ever truly ours, not even one we love deeply. We may share our time, our thoughts, our lives, but we must never confuse closeness with ownership. He knew this, and she felt it. She was not bound to him by obligation, fear, or dependency. She was with him because she chose to be. And this freedom to choose again and again was the soil in which she bloomed. Her transformation was not about becoming what he wanted. It was about becoming more attuned to her own highest self, encouraged but not coerced, supported but never shaped against her will. And he, too, was changed. Not because she demanded it, but because in the presence of someone so committed to her own integrity, he was inspired to deepen his own. This is what love can be when stripped of possession, a sanctuary of mutual growth, a partnership where each person, rooted in reason and compassion, becomes the best version of themselves, not for the other, but alongside the other. In such a space, there is no need for control because there is trust, no need for dominance because there is understanding, no fear of losing the other because the bond is not tethered by force, but by shared purpose. In his love, she was not changed like marble under a sculptor's chisel. She bloomed like a wildflower in open air, naturally, freely, beautifully, and the love they shared did not confine her, it liberated her. It reminded her that transformation does not require surrendering who we are to another, but remembering who we are with the help of another. Through connection, not possession, she came to life. And so, we arrive not at the end of a love story, but at the unfolding of a life, one shaped not by dependence, but by dignity. She bloomed in his love not because he completed her, but because he never tried to claim her. Their connection was not a place of possession, but of possibility, a space in which both chose to rise, not because they had to, but because they wished to. Through the Stoic lens, we see love not as escape from the self, but as a deeper encounter with it. Love, rightly lived, becomes a mirror for virtue, a training ground for reason, and a quiet rebellion against the chaos of impulse. She could bloom because she had first rooted herself in wisdom, in strength, in the inner freedom that no circumstance could take away. And his love did not distract her from that path. It honored it, walked alongside it, and held a quiet reverence for who she was becoming. Let us remember, then, the greatest love is not one that overwhelms or consumes, but one that elevates. It asks not for sacrifice of the self, but for the refinement of it. It teaches us that we are not here to own one another, but to witness one another's becoming with open eyes and steady hearts. She bloomed in his love not because it was perfect, but because it was principled. And in a world so often ruled by desire and fear, that truly is the rarest and most enduring kind of love. Let this be our lesson, to love not as the world teaches us, with urgency, with need, but as the Stoics teach us, with compassion, with reason, and always, always with virtue.